So how is everybody doing this morning? So I want to thank you all for taking time out of your Saturday morning and joining us today for this very important workshop. This is going to cover a lot of details, and for my seasoned veteran listeners, this will close a loop that we've talked about in many different subjects over the last several lectures over the last few years. So this one is going to should click relatively easy for my veteran listeners. However, if you are new to one of my lectures, this material might sound very complex, but I'm going to encourage you to stick with it and keep listening, because towards the end of this lecture, the loop will close and you will understand things much better. So it might be a little confusing at first, but just stick with it and just keep listening. And I will allow plenty of time for any kinds of questions to answer. Okay, so let's get started. Our next lecture, mark your calendars for this. This is going to be Saturday, September 22nd. And I'm going to cover some very important things to do to prepare for winter, including ensuring your immune system is good, ensuring your blood quality is good, because you want to have good blood when it comes to winter. People that are very prone to cold, and we all know it, people that are cold all the time, they're always cold in rooms, and always wearing sweaters in the summer. That's a very good indicator that you have very poor quality of blood. So I'll be going over that, as well as some very powerful European protocols to keep your body resistant to viruses. Because remember, viruses are the worst when the sun is the least. So right now is when you want to start preparing for those seasonal changes that are just around the corner. I'd like to stay connected, so if you go to our Facebook page and simply like us or follow us, you'll be getting daily emails, daily subjects that my wife and I are currently working on our PhDs. And so the more we learn, the more we want to make available to you. And this is a great resource for that. We do daily little updates talking about nutritional protocols, or talking about simple things you can do at home, and occasionally sneak peeks of what the literature lines up with. So it's a very good source of information if you just go to this and stay connected with us. Our location, for those of you that don't know, we're in a 1 square area, right off the executive building on the corner of 83rd and Somerset in 1 Square. So my wife Tiffany and I are founders of Back to Nature Lifestyle Medicine. This is a world-class functional medicine clinic in Prairie Rouge, Kansas. And what we do is we serve our community and we coach people in functional lifestyle changes. I'm a best practitioner, which means I work with the body's natural energy to give outstanding results and superior chiropractic adjustments. My wife and I are also diplomats in nutrition, which means we are expert when it comes to nutritional protocols and fine tweaking, ensuring that you're methylating correctly, ensuring you're using B vitamins correctly, and things like that. And our program has successfully helped thousands of people across the country with a number of chronic illnesses and mystery illnesses and things like that. And again, we strive to educate you on the truth of what's going on and how to maintain your health. Because make no mistake about it, today your health is the most important asset you have, and you should protect it at all costs. So Thomas Edison, this is a famous quote of his: "The doctor of the future will give no medicines, but will interest his patients in the care of human frame and diet and the causes of prevention of disease." I am that doctor of the future, and I encourage you to get to know me. So, throughout history and population studies have shown us that the key to health and longevity resides in the gut. And this is nothing new. Traditional Chinese medicine has known this for thousands of years, and they've always been able to have greater results than anything Western medicine does for gastrointestinal problems. Ayurvedic medicine has always looked at the digestive system as kind of the source of where diseases start. And even Hippocrates himself, who was well considered the father of medicine, said, look to the gut for the initiation of disease, look for gut for the start of all diseases. So as today, modern 2018, we can look at these things and analyze the gut a little more. And we're kind of curious, is it really the gut going on, or is there something else to it? And this is very important to understand, because when you look at these plates of delicious food, it's delicious, right? It's not for you. It's not for you, okay? When you eat a plate of food, the human cells have no ability to eat this whatsoever. It's impossible for a human cell, both biochemically and biochemistry, to eat anything on your plate. It's completely useless. The only thing that can eat the delicious looking food on the plate are microbes. Microbes. And I mean fungal, bacterial, and parasitic microbes that help make up our microbiome. And I'm going to give you a little bit more look into this microscopic world that surrounds us. But these are the ones that break it down. It's impossible for a human cell to eat anything you see here. Parasite, fungal, bacteria break it down into 3 food sources: fat, a sugar, and a building block of protein. And if that building block of protein is not readily used, it's actually shuttled into the liver, where it gets converted into sugar or glucose. So now we're left with 2 fuel sources, fat and sugar, okay, which are still completely useless to human cells. It's impossible for a human cell to eat fat and sugar. But what has to happen is these macronutrients of food molecules have to get channeled into these cells. And they actually get channeled into what's called the mitochondria. And these are well known as the powerhouse of the cell. They're a very interesting bacterial-like structure that, interestingly, have viral DNA. They have viral DNA. So mitochondria look like bacteria, but they have viral DNA. And the fat and the sugar get channeled into these organelles. There they get converted into what's called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And that molecule is the only molecule that's available for a human cell to eat. So to break it down, you are several steps away from getting the fuel sources you need to effectively run your body. And these microbes are crucial for our health. And they're also very vulnerable to chemicals and toxic exposure. And we're starting to see the results of that in our population today. So why are we here today? We're here because we have a problem. We're in trouble. Okay? As a scientist, as a ordained minister, as a functional medicine physician, as a family man, and as a human being, I'm very interested in all aspects of human health and longevity, and ultimately, the survival of our species. And now that has come into question. That question exists now because of these numbers. There was a very stable rate of autism back until around 1975, and then it slowly started to increase and gain momentum. And around the mid-90s, it absolutely took off vertically. And it actually doubled between 2012 and 2015. So 1975, 1 in 5,000 people, 1 in 5,000 kids had autism. Today, that number is 1 out of 36. And there's many skeptics, there's many people that say, well, we're actually diagnosing it better. We are looking for it more aggressively. But whenever that doubled between 2012 and 2015, researchers, and I'm talking cutting edge pioneer doctors, had to look at this and take a step back and realize there's no skewing the data here. These are real numbers. So we are witnessing this extraordinary vertical rise of this devastating neurological condition in very young kids. Now, on the opposite age group, on the opposite spectrum, we're also seeing this very steady rate of Parkinson's and Alzheimer's start to increase. This was very minute in the geriatric population, again, until around mid-90s, and that began to gain tremendous momentum in the vertical climb, just like the autism. So we're seeing a huge rise in Parkinson's in males and Alzheimer's in females in particular. So these two phenomena, complete opposite of the age group, are tracking very similar pathways. In classrooms today, 1 out of 8 kids suffers from kind of attention deficit spectrum. And I think this number is a little high, it's more like 1 out of 6. So 1 out of 6 kids, and that's 3 out of 4 children per classroom, roughly, are affected by some kind of attention deficit spectrum, and they're diagnosed and treated with speed, okay? Which is essentially, they're treated with medication that stimulates adrenaline, okay? And adrenaline is helpful for focus, okay? It's very helpful for focus. So if you're walking out on the sidewalk somewhere on one side of the road, and a car veers out of nowhere at you, it's instantaneous. You don't even have to think about it. All your centers, your healing centers, your creative centers shut down, and all your body does is focus on this car coming at you and make the right appropriate choice. Either stay there and get mowed down by it or jump out of the way. So as a downside to keeping that adrenaline up is you shut off the creative centers of your brain. And this is very concerning today that a large proportion of our children are medicated and actually having their creative centers shut down. So we have to ask ourselves, what kind of society are we going to have when we're medicating this many kids and they're unable to have creative thoughts? Devastating numbers. Devastating numbers. But it doesn't stop at the attention deficit spectrum or the autism. Okay? 1 out of 10 children now are diagnosed with asthma. Allergies are now 1 out of 4 kids. Type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes is 1 out of 4 kids by college. Obesity is 1 out of 3 by college. Major depression has now affected 1 out of 2 American adults. So 1 out of 2 adults today in America have major depression. Why? Because we don't have the building blocks necessary. We are deficient in aromatic ring amino acids, such as tyrosine, phenylalanine, and tryptophan, and these are responsible for making serotonin and dopamine. So brain chemistry is just not there today. Cancer amazingly now is 1 out of 2 people. 1 out of 2 Americans today will be diagnosed with cancer before they die. And that doesn't include skin cancer, but solid organ tumor formations or blood-borne illnesses. Dementia, I'm unfortunate to say, is everyone, 100% of the population. Okay? University of Virginia, that's a very unfortunate statistic, but University of Virginia did a major study. They watched 12,000 people for like 10 years, and what they concluded was, by the time you're 28 years old living in America, you're already showing neurodegenerative cognitive problems and neurological decline. That's 100% of it. So maybe you might find yourself, like I do, if you hit that mile marker of 28, find yourself through the day thinking, where the heck did I just set that thing? You try to think back to your childhood and you kind of start to realize it's possible that I could be having trouble keeping track of my to-do list. I could be having trouble knowing where I just set my keys. Or you could be like me, literally 4 to 5 times a day. I'm just like, where the heck did I just set that? So whether it's young or old, we're really starting to see our population get affected by these devastating problems. And we can't help but ask ourselves, why are Americans getting sicker and sicker every year? So that answer comes from leading doctors and scientists today. We are actually more vulnerable than we've ever been today. So I want to briefly go back to this gut lining, okay? Everything starts in the gut, and I don't want to downplay the important role that has. Our gut lining, okay, in other words, the selectivity it has, it's just absolutely amazing. It's mind-boggling. I study this literally every day. I look under a microscope frequently, and you really cannot overemphasize the intelligence this membrane has that protects us from the outside world and lines our entire digestive tract. Okay? It's 50 microns thick, which is nothing. That is, you pluck one single human hair and you actually slice that in half. That's about 50 microns. And that is what makes up the entire lining of the picture, your brain, your nervous system, and your immune system from the outside world. Okay? One cell layer thick. Now contrast that to the skin on the outside of your body, okay, which is literally 70 to 100 cell layers thick. And that's what protects you from the outside world as well. So your outside skin, which is 70 to 100 layers thick, makes up roughly 1.5 meters of area, 1.5 meters squared of area. Where this gastrointestinal lining, that's one cell layer thick, makes up 2 tennis courts, sort of say. So just kind of looking at these numbers, you really start to get a deep appreciation for this membrane that actually, it's like a cellophane-like membrane that lines your entire digestive tract. And it has a specific function. The way it can distinguish between a pathogen and a nutrient is just mind-boggling. In other words, if you have a foreign bacteria land on that membrane, okay, your body uses very inflammatory mediators, reactionary oxidative systems, to kind of destroy that bacteria. And then a macrophage comes along and kind of cleans that area up, and it stays right there localized, and it does not trigger inflammation. That's very important. Now, if that membrane gets compromised, okay, and you'll know because your urine is going to be off color if you eat red beets. Okay, it's a great way to tell. If your membrane gets compromised, it's utter chaos for the body. Now, if you have a foreign bacteria land on that membrane, it's just chaos for the body. It flares up the entire immune system, and that will drive up inappropriate inflammation. So how do we make this gut lining more vulnerable? We wipe out the microbiome. Microbiome is a term that speaks about not just the bacteria, but the fungi, the parasites, and the viruses that surround us in this microscopic world that we live in today. You want to just be aware how vast this ecosystem is that we live in, because it's certainly tempting. And I know a lot of people kind of walking around thinking this is that we are the majority and these little invisible guys are the minority. But the fact is, we're almost non-existent compared to the volume of life on the planet and this microbiome that it has. From a sheer genomic standpoint, just to give you an idea, we'll look at some numbers here that are pretty astounding. You have 70 trillion cells as a human being. Okay? Human being has 70 trillion cells. And that sounds like a real hefty number. It's just right around the national debt. Well, outnumbering that more than 10-fold, pushing 15-fold to 20-fold, is 1.5 to 2 quadrillion bacteria. And these bacteria are very diverse. Ideally, you want 30 to 40,000 different species within your own body. Okay? We're walking around with a fraction of this right now because of our exposure to chemical pollutants, okay, synthetic fertilizers, and especially antibiotics. And we'll get into that here in just a little bit. 1.5 to 2 quadrillion bacteria. And again, these are very diverse. And I've covered that in details in past lectures about why we're so vacant of these today. We're walking around with a fraction of these. Now, to go from the bacteria to the parasites, okay? Now we're not talking 30,000, but around 300,000 different species of parasites. 300,000. Most of these are not damaging to us, but actually life-giving, and they provide helpful support in our bodily functions. Okay, we have parasites that live in our sweat pores that act as minor janitors. You even have parasites in your eyelid if your eyes are healthy. And yes, I just said that correctly. You have a parasite that lives in your eyelid if your eye is healthy. If you lose that parasite from exposure to antibiotic or chemicals, household cleaners, gasoline, whatever it might be, this is going to make your eye more susceptible to conjunctivitis, inflammation of the sclera, that kind of thing. So we need these. These are very supportive to us, and we probably depend on them for some of their life-giving qualities. 300,000 species of parasites, 6 to 10 are known to be pathological. That's it. So when people come in with parasites, I have to tell them, not necessarily the bad guy. Now we move on to the fungi. Okay, the fungi. 5 million species of fungi that surround us and are part of us. 5 million different species. Now let's take a look at these viruses here. We don't even have categorized for the species of viruses yet because there's just too many of them. Okay, there's way too many of them. We have a rough idea that there's 10 to the 31st power, 10 to the 31 viruses on planet Earth. We don't even have a name for that monstrous of a number. No name exists for a number that big, but it's roughly 10 million times more than the stars in our entire universe. And I don't mean galaxy, I mean universe. So every time you look up at the stars and you see a star up there, multiply that by 10 million, and that's roughly how many viruses are on planet Earth. Yet we have a public health statement to get everyone a flu shot. Let me ask you, do you think that flu shot provides any protection when you're surrounded by this massive amount of numbers? It's ludicrous, right? And this sounds terrifying. Does it not sound terrifying? But let me ask you this. What are the chances that these guys are out to kill us? The answer is 0. The answer is absolutely 0. Because the truth is, if they wanted us dead, we would have never been here. So the fact is, this microbiome is really an ecosystem in which we play a very tiny niche. So from a genetics standpoint, our role is very tiny. We only have 22,000 genes as a human. That a rice plant has 60,000 genes. A rice plant is 3 times more complex than you are. A flea has 30,000 genes. We have 22,000. So we are bizarrely engineered this tiny little genetic envelope, and most of our DNA, 99% of our DNA, doesn't code for a gene. It does not code for a gene. It seems to be inserts from viruses and other species that actually inserted their data into our genome. So the brilliant capacity of human beings was creativity and adaptability. Okay, we're the only species that's been able to adapt to every climate on planet Earth. That ability of us to adapt is from our DNA being so plastic, moldable, and constantly getting feedback from the environment around it. And this has been referred to as junk DNA for years because if it didn't make a gene, it doesn't make a protein, it must be junk, right? Well, 99%, nature never puts 99% of its effort into waste. So it turns out, in recent years, we've discovered that this 99%, that's from other species that actually injected into us. We've got this whole reality moment of, oh my gosh, we're actually making microRNA. MicroRNA, that's very important. These are little trafficking proteins that modify the behavior of the genes. Okay? We now know that a single human gene can have over 200 different proteins just based on its microRNA in the environment. Co-repressors and co-activators, things that turn things on, things that turn things off. You are getting all this in your environment. So really, our plasticity or our moldability to change is coming from our DNA able to absorb material from the outside world, all this data that we're constantly exposed to. If you do the math, with your 22,000 genes you have, you can build somewhere around 4 million different bodies. Your body has the capacity to build 4 million different bodies just based on your environment. So if you're healthy and you feel good and you feel strong and you're functioning good on a normal day-to-day basis, it's only because you've built an environment around you that allows that to be the body you live today. If you have a chronic ailment, whether it's chronic sinus congestion, joint pain, blood sugar problems, whatever it might be, if you have a chronic ailment that's with you every single day, it's only because your environment is allowing that to be the body you made today. This is really good news for all of us because it means we have an almost incalculable ability to change who we are and how we feel today. So this is kind of the big picture of what I'm trying to tell you. For most of us, even when people say microbiome is important, and people are definitely starting to get into probiotics and talking about, I got to drink my Covita, probiotics are important. Most of the time, they don't realize that we are less than 1/1,000,000% of life on Earth. And it's important to realize that our genome, our genetic ability, expresses radically different through epigenetic modulation. So our genome expresses themselves through environmental influence. That's very important. Now, to tie back the expression of human genome with this microbiome, let's look at this microRNA again. These circulating in the bloodstream are very unique. Okay? And the way typical proteins get made is with messenger RNA. So you have a gene. Okay? You have 22,000 genes. And these don't leave home. These stay deep inside the nucleus of the DNA, okay, for protection. They stay right there. What happens normally when you are making a new protein or a new muscle or hair or anything else is that deep down inside that DNA, it uncoils just a little bit and exposes a gene. And microRNA and some cofactors act on those sites. And then that actually leaves the nucleus, goes into the cell, and goes for a protein to be built on top of that. That's how you make new tissues. That's how if you have a cut and it heals, or if you make new muscle or make new hair, that's the process that goes behind it. Now, on contrast, that other 99% of microRNA has nothing to do with the coding. Okay, that does not stay in the cell. That leaves home. Okay. And the way it leaves home is it doesn't even leave home, it leaves your body, okay? And it leaves your body through your breath, through your sweat, through all your body's secretions like urine, things like that. So if I was to swab your cheek and go analyze it, I could tell exactly what genes are starting to turn on off and what microRNAs actually influence that, just from doing a swab of your cheek. Now, because our saliva has little envelopes in it, little pockets of microRNA, and these are so tiny, they're actually suspended in air, okay? And just to give you a rough idea how important this stuff is, just your breath alone can influence it. If you go to church and you listen to a sermon, or you go to a college and you listen to a lecture from a professor, or even the example in here, my breath coming out with the microRNA that I'm actually expelling is actually beginning to change all of your genetic coding. All your genes are starting to get modified just from my breath. Sounds pretty mind-boggling, right? Have you ever noticed that women, when they get together in a house together, their menses sync up? Right? Okay. What about something further? People that have pets, people that have dogs and cats. You ever notice the longer that person's around your pet, the more characteristics they start to get of their pet, and vice versa. You are constantly being plastic with your environment around you. And I can take it even better. When you go out camping and you go out and you spend time in nature, okay, that microbiome that you're around, from the soil, the trees, everything, expelling out that microRNA modifies your body. That's why when people go camping and they go stay strong for a week, their sleeping cycles improve, everything about their health starts to improve, their blood pressure naturally goes down. Then you take that same person, you throw them into a cubicle, what happens? They're missing out on all that microRNA or the environmental input. See, it all kind of goes back together, right? Now, that little bit of information that we are exchanging right now, I'm exchanging with you, is very tiny. Contrast that to the bacteria that's inside of your gut, to the fungus inside your gut, parasites that you carry, okay? All that stuff, they secrete microRNA as well, all right? So how do these microbiome organisms influence genome expression? We are just scratching the surface because we barely started to code the microRNA in the fungi that's already inside of our blood, and they account for a hefty portion of our microRNA. And just by the sheer numbers I shared with you a little bit ago, what we're finding out is that 99% of the microRNA in our bloodstream, microRNA that's coming out of our breath, is non-human source. 99% of it. So, how do these microbiome organisms influence genomic expression? They have junk DNA too, and they're making the organelles that live inside. I'm talking about the bacteria, the fungi, the parasites that live inside of us. They make microRNA too, and they're secreting into their environment, which is your gut, your sinuses, your tissues, your breath. Okay, so every time you go outside and walk by a forest, you're actually getting, when you smell that organic compound, that's actually soil that's getting decomposed, and that will give your body information. If you go outside right now and you go for a walk, the microbiome that is expelling microRNA and it's influencing you is going to give your body a subtle message. The message says, it's starting to get fall. Time to start reconsolidating and rebuilding and putting all your energy into the less into the peripheral and more into the core, just like the trees do. Because if we start to notice the trees change over the season, what they're doing is putting all their energy into their core roots. How do they know to do this? A lot of it has to do with that microRNA that's circulating in the environment. So all that, we're supposed to be very symbiotic with our environment. And have we made our relationship with our environment and these microbes less symbiotic? Well, anyone know who these two people are? This all started back in the 1800s. We have these two academic scientists that are arguing. One of them is Béchamp. He's a French guy. He's the guy on the right here. And he was arguing that there's no problem with germs. There's nothing to fear with bacteria or these other germs unless there's a compromisation of the host. And this was 1800s. In other words, there's a problem with that person's terrain or their environment themselves that makes them more vulnerable to infection. That's why you can go eat with a girlfriend or a family member or something. You guys can eat the same food. One person gets sick from it, the other person doesn't. You guys will have wondering how. One person has a much more compromised terrain. Simple. Okay, and arguing with him, the gentleman on the left here is Louis Pasteur. Okay, Louis Pasteur was arguing and saying, no, germs can make you sick. Germs can make you sick. Anyone can be prone to polio. They were looking at black disease at the time, and they were studying all these things. And Louis Pasteur was the one that said, no, all germs can make you sick. And of course, Louis Pasteur ended up winning the argument. And that's how we developed the term pasteurization, where we began to heat pasteurize everything to kill all the bacteria, to kill all these microbes that already surround us. Microbes that are in milk. Today, we kill almost. We kill anything that could potentially have a bacteria in our food supply, all based off the notion that germs are bad for you, and this microbiome is bad, and it must be a potential invader. Okay? All that based on this, we sterilize our food. And it turns out 150 years later that Béchamp was absolutely the one that's correct. It's the vulnerability of a poor terrain or a wiped out ecosystem that makes us prone to the invasive behavior of the bacteria. Our clinic is well known for infections. We get nationwide referrals, people that come to us, they have infections that are out of control, and other doctors could not seem to get a handle on it. I've come to realize that there's no room in academia for us to call any kind of bacteria bad or a fungal bad. Okay? And the reality is, if somebody shows up and they have even Lyme disease, which is a parasitic spirochete that makes a very interesting amino acid relationship with blood, so that's why it's a little harder to track. But if that shows up, or somebody has staph, or somebody that has MRSA shows up to our clinic, and this bacteria looks like a problem, okay, because it's in their tissue or in their bloodstream. Bacteria is only there because it's trying a last-ditch effort to make some kind of normal metabolism in your soil, because your soil is compromised. The bacteria is not the bad guy, because we see the same process in nature. We see the same process in organic gardening. If you go out to the Missouri State Parks, you drive out there in nature where there's a lot of trees and a lot of nature, and you drive out there and you have a bunch of rototillers and bulldozers, and you clear all the trees, you rototill the soil, and you basically sterilize that land. The first thing that's going to show up is going to be the weeds. But the weeds aren't the bad guy. They're only there trying to provide some traits. They're trying to give life back to the soil. And we see the same exact process going on in a human system today. Okay? We build a hospital somewhere, and we try to sterilize the entire ecosystem using everything known to man. We use radiation. We use alcohols, ultraviolet light, to kill all these microbes off, right? So now what we're doing is selecting for the most harshest, adaptable weed that's gonna try to bring life to that. And that's the problem with us today, is we as humans have never been so sterile. So guess what? That's why everyone has all these infections, because we're so exposed, our microbiome is actually getting wiped out. Now, if you see, the weed's not a bad guy, and I want you guys to understand that. If you let the weeds take over, they don't dominate for very long. Okay? You wipe out an area, the weeds pop up, and you just kind of let them do their thing. Soon you got two popular sprouts popping up. You let it go for several months more, and then you're going to have evergreen trees kind of start to take over. You let it go a little while longer, and you're going to notice the weeds have to die out. The weeds are starting to die out. And it's not because the terrain is curing anything. Let me get that very clear. It's not because the terrain is curing anything. It's just a natural ecosystem of how nature works. Okay? The weeds get to back off once they bring life back to the soil, and they have to die out to make room for this big ecosystem to start to take over. And that's exactly what we've done with the antibiotic era as well. Okay, we've seen the same exact process in human systems. So this is very important, and this is going to kind of tie into what we're doing here today. In the 1940s, we created penicillin. What is penicillin? It's a bread mold. It's a bread mold. Okay. The penicillin property we want is actually a secretion from that bread mold. So here's a bread mold or a fungi that's making an antibacterial secretion. That is very important. I want you guys to get that right now. So bread mold makes an antibacterial secretion. Why would mold need to check the growth of bacteria? Because it's trying to live in a symbiotic relationship with bacteria. What's the bacteria secrete? Anti-mold. Antifungals, anti-yeast. Bacteria secrete antivirals. They also secrete anti-parasitic secretions. Why? Because they're living harmonious together, trying to be in a cooperative relationship. So when we fix the terrain of a person, again, we see all these conditions, whether it's neurological, whether it's digestive, whether it's blood sugar. We see all these conditions begin to become resolved away. And it's not because we're curing anything, it's because you're fixing the person. And again, never in human history have we been so sterile as a species. That brings us to the next thing. How can we begin to repair the damaged soil of our body? Remember, think about those numbers. How many of those numbers microbiome out there? Huge numbers of fungi, right? How can we begin to repair our damaged soil of our body? Today, I just kind of want to focus on changing one habit. And a large majority of this slideshow is actually plagiarized from Dr. Bob Mikowski. Some of you guys might have seen that interview I did with him recently. We discussed the actual health benefits associated with Ganoderma lucidum, which is probably the most researched nutrient on planet Earth today. So if I had to ask, what's the best nutritional supplement today? What would you guys say? We could debate all day on this, right? Vitamin C, magnesium, minerals, okay? Vitamin D, that's up there, right? So I wanted to give you a breakdown of why this is very important and what that microbiome is and why it's getting broken down. The most important supplement is one that you can take routinely throughout your day. That's you're not going to have to be reminded of, and that's going to assist you on getting down to that path of wellness. That's the best supplement, one that you can take easily without being reminded as a daily routine. So as we get into the literature now, what if we could give people a cup of coffee? That's something they can do consistently. They actually begin to reduce stress in the body, help their body to eliminate toxins, address one of the top problems in the world today, which is malnutrition, and help people feel better physically so they'll want to get out and do more. Well, our coffee does all of these things. Remember, malnutrition, right? How's that play with coffee? Because that food on your plate is useless without microbes breaking down. So when you look at what makes our coffee better, it's actually the mushroom Ganoderma that's blended with it. And this mushroom is also called reishi. It's also called ling shi. And if you notice the date on this slide, that's last month. And up to this date, there are well over 3,000 research studies and literature that demonstrate health benefits of Ganoderma. Right there, there's the date right there. 3,000 PubMed literature studies. This slide here demonstrates the rigorous amount of certifications it has to ensure its world-class quality. USDA certified organic, GMP facility, meaning it's a clean room environment, eco certified, kosher certified, halal as well as other certifications. So you know this is a very clean, heirloom, chemical-free product. Now, our Ganoderma is grown in its natural environment, so it requires all the necessary microRNA in its microbiome environment, which is very important to remember. Okay? Ours is grown on wood, but as the demand for Ganoderma begins to increase because people are learning of its health benefits and it can be very popular, lots of companies out there are fast tracking it and actually growing it in a plastic bag in a laboratory. So I want you to look at these two pictures very carefully. What kind of microRNA are the competitors missing out on by cutting these corners and growing stuff in a plastic bag in the lab? Now, from the little pieces we just talked about, people are like, what's he talking about? Now it makes sense. If it's a natural environment, it's acquiring all the microRNA, and it's very obvious just by looking at these two pictures. All right, now let's talk about toxicity issues, because that's what's beginning to affect all of us when we look at those numbers. There's a researcher out there named Paul Stamets, and he actually has a TED Talk titled 6 Ways Mushrooms Will Save the World. One of the things he points out is that they are very effective for cleaning up the environment around them, and that's both internal and external environments. So here's a very interesting PubMed study where they use the term persistent organic pollutants. And I've covered these in vast detail in the last lectures. Okay? Some of these chemicals that we're exposed to have a half-life of 100 years. So that means multiple generations can be intoxicated by these chemicals that persist in environments. Ganoderma has actually been shown to break that down and effectively remove it from the environment. Look at the differences in these two groups. Again, there's a published, this is published literature right here. So these next pictures are a bit graphic. This is actually referring to a mouse study. Okay. In this particular study from the literature, they gave mice a developmental neurotoxin, one of the most toxic neurochemicals known. When they gave this to pregnant mice, 80% of the offspring was born either with a herniated brain, okay, born with no brain at all, or born with a herniated spine. Okay. Now, of course, these two right here on the right are actually born dead. Okay. But when they gave these pregnant mice 1 dose of Ganoderma spores, 1 dose, that birth defect rate went from 80% to 22%. 22%, 80% to 22% with 1 dose of Ganoderma. So it's very, very, very powerful at detoxifying. So Frederica Pereira, Columbia University, is one of the world's leading toxicologists, particularly in its effect of chemical exposure in utero. She's done some groundbreaking research and discovered that the average baby today is exposed to more than 200 environmental toxins before they ever take their first breath. Remember earlier today, I talked about you're more vulnerable than ever. Why about that microbiome? Start to see the big picture. Now, we looked at the numbers of this earlier, but it really becomes frightening and tragic is the condition of autism. This is a pediatric journal that says toxic exposure in early pregnancy life is among the top risk factors for autism. So it's a great product for pregnant women as Ganoderma has been found safe for pregnant women. So we talked about toxins and these exposures and what they're doing to our population as a whole. Now let's kind of talk about stress. Okay? That's among the top 3 reasons why a person goes to a doctor today. People are very stressed out. Again, it has to do with specific nutritional deficiencies. Plus, we're completely worked. Most people's dollar, okay, is half of what it was last year. That really contributes to some stress. So here's a PubMed study that is showing Ganoderma actually has a calming effect comparable to diet, and that is unbelievable. Okay? One of these has large amounts of microRNA and it's safe. The other one is nothing more than chemicals. So it's a very obvious choice. So again, when you address the soil of the person or terrain, you get all-around benefits. Here's another published study showing Ganoderma supports GABA production. Okay, gamma aminobutyric acid is like the brakes in a car that slow down the brain activity and help us relax and maintain a sense of calmness. And for those that drink Ganoderma, I know you can tell that right afterwards, right? I always get that calming effect. I think it's awesome. Busy brains. So again, this is very important because most Americans not only have compromised soil, but they're also very poor methylators. They're not able to convert things correctly because the methylation process to occur for one thing to get converted to another, you have to have specific food factors that have to do that, such as minerals. Okay, I mentioned before, about 90% of American soil is dead in minerals, so we call it minerals. Okay, plus B vitamins. That's one of the most common nutritional deficiencies today. One of the best sources of B vitamins is liver. Nobody eats liver anymore, and the liver that you see is probably not fit to eat because of the farming practices, agricultural practices that go on today. Most of you have seen this in my office. This is really awesome study here. This is just a 7-year-old boy who has ADHD, okay? His parents did not want to give him medication. This was actually Ganoderma hot cocoa, which is one of the products we have here today. 1 week of actually drinking this Ganoderma and hot cocoa slowed his brain activity down. You can see it very obviously in this 2 before and after. Isn't that incredible? Okay, not medicated. This is not chemically done. This is by addressing his soil. Okay, simply by giving him a hot cocoa every day. So, Ganoderma, this is another very interesting study out of sports science. Let's see if I can catch up on my notes here. Sports science, they examined the brain chemistry of golfers and actually looked about the EEGs in their putting green. What they discovered was that golfers who had the lowest amount of brain activity, had the calmest minds, actually were the best putting. Okay? So imagine how much more productive we could be throughout the day. Slow that busy mind down. Okay? On the more extreme side, of the opposite side of the calm brain, Ganoderma has shown to be very anti-epileptic properties straight from the literature, as well as anti-convulsant and neuroprotective properties. Okay? And we just saw that on the kid with the writing difference. That's neuroprotection, protecting his brain. So here's another very in-depth look at how that works. And this again a mice study, and they gave these 2 groups of mice controlled concussion. Okay? And then they gave 1 group of mice Ganoderma spores to eat food, and they sacrificed both groups at 21 days. This was the difference in the mice that had the Ganoderma. Look at that plaque formation clearing out. That is the substance in people's brains today when they have Alzheimer's, dementia. These amyloid plaques are misfolded proteins is what they are. So proteins work by their shape, just like a lock and key mechanism. And if that protein is misfolded, it's going to clog up the system and create all sorts of havoc and problems. And we don't just see these plaques in brains of Alzheimer's or dementia. This same plaque formation actually accumulates in the pancreas of type 1 diabetics. It accumulates in the liver and the pancreas of type 2 diabetics. Actually, it accumulates in the lymphatics and lymphomas of people that have certain types of cancer. Ganoderma is actually proven to clear that stuff out, which is incredible. Again, it decreases inflammation, swelling, and neurodegeneration after head trauma. So again, it's very helpful for brain function. Here's another picture of it actually dissolving those brain plaques I just kind of talked about. Absolutely incredible. And it's not curing anything. It's addressing the microbiome, which is an underlying issue. Now, we talked about the immune-enhancing properties of this. And you guys should already know kind of the underlying mechanism. Remember the red bowl we talked about? Penicillin? What's it secrete? Antibacterial, right? Antifungal, antiparasitic. So now if we look at the immune-enhancing properties of this, look at these studies demonstrating Ganoderma actually increases natural killer cells. It increases neutrophil function, which are your white blood cells. It's a Th1 and Th2 modulator, so it enhances microbes responsible for immunity. It's actually proven against 11 different cancers and source some of the most common viruses known to be problematic. This is a slide here, lots of mechanisms going on, but basically what it's saying is Ganoderma is proven to stop the replication of the HIV virus, which is kind of nice. You know, we've got the cold season coming up. This would be a great alternative to just kind of add into your daily routine for antiviral properties. Remember that viruses are worse when the sunlight's the least. It's also fantastic for allergies. Again, by addressing the soil. Yes. So Ganoderma has also been proven to open more airway mechanisms. Prescription inhalers and proven effective against airway inflammatory processes. So it actually works more mechanisms to open the airway than the prescription inhalers do. And it kind of makes sense because I just saw a study this last week that shows the more Clorox bleach you're exposed to in your house and the more chemicals like that, the higher increase you're going to have of asthma. Now, do you guys understand the mechanism of why now? You're wiping out microbiome that's part of your fungal and bacteria and everything else with these chemicals, and you're setting yourself up to be more prone to infections. Opens airway inflammation, lowers inflammation, allergies, and asthma. Again, this is a published study. So this has been a very substantial increase in the year of tick bites. You guys probably all know. We've had our office flooded with people that have Lyme and various other mysterious bug bites, and we kind of treat them the same. This is a published study showing several cases, actually showing the mechanisms of Ganoderma increasing resistance to Lyme. Okay, why? Because it activates neutrophils and natural killer cells, which are very powerful immune modulators. Again, Ganoderma increases natural killer cells. It kills spirochetes. Okay, that's the kind of parasite that Lyme is. Here's a published peer-reviewed study. Okay, HPV virus. Okay, 88% reduction in 60 days. 88% reduction. There's no medication on earth that can do this. Okay, again, this inhibits the migration or metastasis of some really aggressive cancer cells, right out of the literature. Another published study that literally shows Ganoderma abolishes. Hey, what's this word here, guys? Do that microRNA from tumor cells? We talked about microRNA at all. Ganoderma stops that from tumor cells right there in the literature. Ganoderma actually helps regenerate brain tissue by inducing stem cell production. This is out of a journal, published peer-reviewed journal, Stem Cell Reports. Stem cell possibilities. Stem cells can differentiate into 220 different cells in the body. When you have an underfunctioning heart, or a thyroid, or a joint issue that really needs to be addressed, the best thing to do is have some stem cells go there because they can make 220 different things depending on what is needed in the body. And that's absolutely remarkable. Again, Ganoderma prevents autoimmune. This was a really interesting study when they used some mice. A lot of people don't understand, but the underlying issue that we're starting to find out causing diabetes type 1 is Epstein-Barr virus infection of the pancreas. That's actually what's causing type 2 diabetes. And they actually induced it in 100% of mice by giving this to mice Epstein-Barr right into the pancreas. Then they fed them Ganoderma, and they absolutely prevented the onset of diabetes in that moment. They gave them the infection, gave them the Ganoderma, and still prevented them from getting type 1 diabetes. I mean, that's remarkable. That's absolutely remarkable. Again, it also prevents apoptosis, or the breakdown of pancreatic beta cells, and enhances cell regeneration of the pancreas. Enhances pancreas cell regeneration. Acts directly on the basal cells to increase insulin resistance. Now on this slide, there's a lot of stuff going on. I'll just kind of break it down for you. They know that Ganoderma actually works the same mechanisms regulating blood sugar that metformin does. So it does the same thing in the liver that metformin does. But actually metformin, you guys remember from my cardiac lecture a while back, I gave you some side effects of metformin, including it will tank your B12. That can cause your homocysteine to go up, and you can have an increased risk of stroke or heart attack. It has many other side effects, including a 20 to 25% failure rate after 5 years. So a quarter of the people taking metformin will no longer work within 5 years. Again, your body doesn't like chemicals. It wants that microbiome. Very helpful for the pain associated with rheumatoid arthritis. Substantial relief in fibromyalgia pain within 6 weeks. This enhances ulcer healing and controls inflammation, and actually very, very helpful for inhibiting H. pylori to grow and out of control. And that's a tough bug. That's a tough one. Sometimes it can take, we've had patients where it's taken 6 months to a year to completely get that using groups. Okay, Ganoderma is known. 10 known mechanisms for actually controlling the inflammatory process. 10 mechanisms known for actually controlling the inflammatory modulating process. And that's a big problem. Most diseases actually come from inflammation. Too much inflammation, hanging on for too long, sticking around longer than it should. Most of you guys know from previous lectures, inflammation is not a bad guy either. We've all seen it on the surface. You hurt your hand, you get the redness, you get the swelling, painful, okay? So inflammation is actually the cornerstone of the body's healing. The body has to have inflammation to heal. But the body has very complex mechanisms to keep that control, because if it loses its boundary of where it's supposed to be, it loses its timeline for how long it's supposed to be on, it actually will start to spread, loses boundary, it starts destroying tissue and driving inflammation, or driving autoimmune, things like that. So inflammation is one of those things you want to keep control of. 10 known mechanisms it controls. Okay? Very top line up there. Ganoderma improves gut microbiome. So look at all the organs listed. Again, I'm not trying to sell you something. I'm not trying to tell you that this is a catch-all, because there's many things involved with your health. But I've never seen something so profound for actually rebuilding microbiome, and that's the big picture. And I showed you those startling slides in the beginning about how we're at, what our numbers are today. So this is a great addition to start kind of rebuilding your own microbiome on a daily basis with something that you know, coffee drinkers and tea drinkers, 95% of the population. Okay? They never have to be reminded. You never have to remind a coffee drinker to have a coffee. And they never plan on quitting. So that's where the benefit really comes in, is daily application of this, and actually start to rebuild the interconnecting of your body. And as you guys saw from just the sheer numbers, we are mostly fungal origin. 99% of our circulating microRNA is non-human source. even promotes weight loss by improving the obese microbiome. So again, very helpful for the microbiome. I've had some patients tell me that they've been drinking this for a week and they notice a substantial weight loss without changing anything else. That's pretty awesome, right? So again, what I'm going to do now is thank you guys all for being here. I'd like to open the floor for any kinds of questions you guys might have.